Okay. Hello everyone. How is the sound today? Good. Yes. So I maybe I've fixed the problems I was having with audio. So the game has gone moved fairly quickly so far. I'd say Ichiriki is representing Japan. I'd say he's the most successful Japanese player in recent international tournaments. So he's even saying that I think he's made it to the semifinals in a number of tournaments, but not further than that. So maybe this is his chance to get to the final game of an international tournament. And in the last in the last games of the Ing Cup, I noticed that he used a lot of time, and his opponent was playing very quickly, and he ended up paying. With the Ing Cup, you pay a penalty when you run out of time, so there was a penalty of points that he had to pay. And so I was thinking maybe he had learned a lesson from that in this game and was playing a bit more quickly than usual. But I still think it looks like he has more than 10 minutes. Oh, Go Barukoichi has given me a present. Thank you. Um, I still think that he's something like 10 minutes behind. Um, So he could potentially get into time trouble. It is a difficult opening that they're playing here, with a lot of things happening at the same time. So it's really hard to say what the focus of the fight here is. White has settled the lower right area, but there's a fight just starting on the upper side, and there's a fight sort of pending on the left side of the board. So both of these areas are pretty important. It looks like for the time being, black is sort of leaving that stone on the left and prepared to sacrifice it. So at this point, the capping move, Crystal Harris is asking about the capping move. Let's go back just to that position. Um, this move here, this is actually the most aggressive um, response that you can have when your opponent has played the shoulder hit. So if black plays something like this, then white will be able to push. And you can see that white is sort of covering black from above. And this would be a fairly good shape for white towards the upper side. Or if black pushes in the other direction, white is probably going to crawl here. And this also is a very cramped position for black, where white can, in this case, white might just play here. And black does not really have a very good shape there. It's good for white, I think. So the capping move that is marked in this position is almost always it's in a fairly good position, however black plays. That said, black does have options such as, for instance, this move, which could be good later. So this is still there, and moving towards the upper side is still there. And so it makes sense in a way that black left it and played away. So I'd say you could try the capping move in your games. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's see. This is the game position. Looks like a position where white has choices of adding a stone to the left side, or continuing to attack let's just make some examples. So white could play something like this to continue the attack on the upper side. This would be a good move. This is the move I would choose in the upper left area. Or if you chose to play more solidly, this would be the move. This would be the most adventurous move, but it looks a bit dangerous in this position. Otherwise, white could be thinking of doing... This is the favorite move for AIs towards the upper right corner. So this is something that white could be thinking of doing. Oh, Stephen Hu has come. Hello, Stephen. So one of these three is what I sort of like this move, but black's probably going to move out here. I don't know. A combination of these two moves is what I would expect. Maybe white's going to play the corner first. But let's go back to the beginning, just to show you the opening moves. L3 with invading the corner. AlphaGo would usually... Actually, AlphaGo had a number of... That's Cyphus asking, didn't AlphaGo usually follow up the L3 move by invading the corner? And yes, that is the star point attachment. So AlphaGo would usually, for instance, in this position, actually. For instance, in this position, AlphaGo would be playing a move like this. So this is the AlphaGo move. Let's go back to the beginning of the game and look through the moves. Ben Ballantyne, thank you for the present. So this is Shinjin So with black, and he's playing 3-4 points. Okay. Actually, I guess it's pretty unusual for black to allow white to play the pressing move here. After we've had AIs, a number of players, most players actually, have wanted to play this move towards the left side, either here or here, because the computer programs tend to give white a good score when white presses at that point. And white would probably answer with something like this. But instead, black plays the Kakari on the left. White played this exchange. And sliding here on the second line is another move that was reassessed after we had computer programs. People used to play on the third line. And when black does that, I don't really know what white's going to do. But when black does that, that does strengthen the white group when white has these forcing moves here and can counterattack on the side here with something like this, for instance. And so the sliding move that was played in the game is refusing to give white any of those forcing moves. And it means that when black does that, this move on the right side here, when black does this, there's actually, with that stone on the second line instead of the third line, the fact that white has no forcing moves from above. Anything white plays in the vicinity here will not be forcing. It's going to lose a tempo. That means that it's more difficult for white to settle this group in the lower right. And black has more potential to attack it. Rick Rubenstein is asking, are there players who deliberately play moves that are slightly inferior for AIs as a psychological tactic? Probably not as a psychological tactic. For a player who is less familiar with the long variations that people research with AI programs, some of the players actually have very long sequences of moves that they research and they're going to play according to what the computer suggested. And when you have an opponent like that, sometimes a player will play a different move in order to avoid a variation that player might think the opponent knows fairly well. So they might be slightly inferior. Basically, in the beginning of the game, a few points in the point system that computers use, it doesn't really make much difference. Like we make the bigger mistakes later in the game when the computer programs are more, you might say, confident of their assessment of the situation, and you see the scores fluctuate more towards the end of the game. Yes, Shinjin So he is very knowledgeable of the modern openings. I think that that's Stephen Hu again talking about Shinjinso, and I agree that he not only the top players memorize them, but they have their own understanding of these modern openings. Understanding is more important. So white played the capping move. This is to settle this white group and take Sente so that white can play this big move on the upper right. And as someone was saying, white is going to follow that move up. For instance, white could have done it immediately with this move. This is the follow-up move for white's play at L3. But when black played once here. And so they're jumping around a little bit here. This move, it really took me by surprise. White's playing right next to a big black wall. And can white just answer at C12? Cyphus is asking, can white just answer black with C12? If white answers, this is a move that could be considered. I think that the meaning is maybe C12. Maybe we're further into the game. I was thinking he was talking about this kind of move. Oh well. Ask again if I was wrong. You mean mimicking black? Okay. I wouldn't have thought of that move. I think that the upper side in this game is a bit more important, so I sort of agree with Ichiiki's choice to move to the upper side. Playing here is a big point too. Miguel Molina is saying he doesn't understand why neither player haned at h. So white would play a hane there. This would be a big move for white. And it would be okay for white to play that. It would be a vital point as far as shape is concerned. The reason I would give that white did not play that is because the lower side is not going to turn into much territory, so it doesn't have any real territorial profit. And so players don't attach so much value to this kind of shape move anymore, as much as they did before computer programs came and changed everything. And speed is very important. In this board position, I would also be very much focusing on the upper side with that a lot of space there. And this move that white has played is hitting a weak point in black's position there. Okay, so this invasion right next to the black wall it really did come unexpected. And then this capping move, it is a very aggressive way that white is playing. When black pushes through here, I'd say it seems fairly natural for white to be adding a stone to the right, because black can push through there. And it's natural. This is also a vital point to set up black's shape. And white is more or less alive now. Okay, so we've jumped a few moves ahead. White has played a very solid move here. So I wouldn't choose this move. It's a very slow move, so I wouldn't play that one. I probably would have chosen this one on the right, although I don't really know. For instance, something like this might happen. Sorry, not that way. And like this. And white would get a base on the upper side, basically, with some extra forcing moves. But instead, he played... Now that's it's a bit slow. I don't like the move. I would have preferred to play locally something like this. which seems to be taking away black's eye space a little bit better. So in the game, white played here. Yes, black slides and pushes. Okay, and then white played this move. So while making it easy for black, white did get sente, I guess. So that was maybe the trade-off. Okay, so we've caught up with the game now. Right. Derek Neal seems to agree with me, asking why not e3, which is the diagonal move. Yes. So now we've caught up with the game. I'd say black has a number of choices. There's actually 4 moves that are commonly played in professional games. So since the game has sort of just paused a little bit here, maybe I can go into that. Black p5. Black p5 can be played. That's Bodo W. Let's take the moves one at a time. So we can start with p5. If black plays here, white's going to go, let's see. Actually, white can go straight down or play at the 3-3 point in the corner. Maybe white's going to play the 3-3 point. And this depends on the ladder, but of course, with that stone on the white stone on the 5th line is breaking this ladder. So that's okay. I think this fight looks, it's probably playable for white. White might even play here first. And here. And this is just troublesome for black. It's not looking so good. So, when white plays the hane towards the corner, black would play some kind of a connection, something like this. It looks like it's going to be difficult for black to cut this off. So that's maybe how white would play in this case. If black plays here, this is an option. And in this case, white will probably play straight down. And again, white has a choice of curling into the corner or playing underneath. So this would be playable for white. Actually, in this case, the stronger two choices are to play a hane here or to play straight down. So let's take a look at playing straight down. I think this is what might actually happen. When black plays straight down, turning on the bottom. I'm sorry, I missed the context for that question, Derek Neal. So if black plays here, white can jump out in this direction. In this case, black would, maybe black would just connect up there. So this way, black would keep the corner territory, and the fight would switch to the right side, a combination of the right side and the upper side. Or if white plays here, black can play here. This reverts to the mainstream variation of this joseki, which can happen when black plays here and white plays down. It's the same variation. But in this case, I'm afraid white might be playing a hane into the corner. So this would revert to that variation. And if white plays here, black plays here. White will play a hane here to put emphasis on the cut on the 3rd line, the cut at 0.05. And if black plays here, white can connect to the side with this move. Something like this, or something like this. So white would connect to the side like that. And this would be okay for white. Or if black plays here, it could get a bit more complicated. But it's going to be difficult for black to capture these stones. For instance, if black does something like this, maybe black can capture them, but it's not going to be, even if white loses the 4 stones, white does have a lot of potential to squeeze from the outside. Actually, this is going to be okay for white. Black can capture the stones like this. The latter favors black. So I guess white would play something like this maybe, and something like this. And white can afford. There's actually a famous Yosei sequence there in the corner. So we'll assume that white's finished all the doesn't have any potential from the left. The Tetsuji would be to play an attachment here, and white gets to take away the whole corner in this sequence. So it's actually not such a big territory when you look at it this way. And it's probably not a good idea for black to try to capture in this fashion. Okay, we're back to the game. In the game, black did play that move and played straight down, and white jumped out. And so black extends here. This is a slightly stronger move than I was suggesting. And the idea is that if white answers just with a connection, then black's going to connect underneath like this. And that would be more efficient, getting that extra extension towards the side. That's okay, so white did not answer it. So just to look at the overall position here, I'd say black is probably going to get something like 30 points on the lower side. But we don't really know for sure. Because there's still some opening for white to come in from the center. So for instance, one thing that white could do is play somewhere around here at some point, threatening to do something with those 2 stones on the right, and this would reduce the black territory. And so it could go down to something in the vicinity of 20 points maybe, if white handles that fairly well. So it's not so big yet, but if black manages to add stones to that area, it could easily spread out into the center of the board and become bigger. So it's a kind of a fluid area. Black has, for the time being, about 10 points in the upper right and a few points on the upper side. So it's probably a bit early to give point scores for the territories, but it looks like black could potentially have somewhere in the vicinity of 40 points of territory. And if white surrounds the left side from the 6th line, which would use one more move, with a move somewhere around here, looks like white could get that territory there. And that would be close to 40 points if nothing bad happened to it. It's still a bit loose, a bit thin, the territory, but if white gets the whole area, it's going to be close to 40 points. So if white ends up getting that, it's going to be a lot of territory. And white does have some extra territories in the lower left and the lower right corners. So I'd say white white has a very slight potential advantage in territory, while black, as you can see, black is trying to move onto the attack. And any move towards the left side is going to take away that territory from white. So a lot depends on who gets the left side first. After this fight on the right settles down a little bit. It's hard to say who's attacking at this point. Aha. Um, okay. Let's take this question. Crystal Harris is saying, how would you suggest black limits white's territories on the left? Um, I'd say maybe black could get away with jumping on the fourth line. So we'll say white. I wonder where. Let's say white plays something like this. Maybe black could play here. D10, D11, D9. Yeah, that's D9. Sorry about that. Or black could try. Covering here would be a bit more sharp if white plays something like this. It looks like maybe black can get away with it. In something like this, black would be threatening to break out into the center or make a ko on the left side. So this kind of thing would be okay for black. The ko is not so... It's not so bad, really. Black can play ko threats like this. And white's corner is not so strong either. So this would be good for black. So to go back a few moves. So I think, yeah, black has potential with covering here too. And if white answers, then in this case, maybe black could play a bit more lightly like this. The relatively simple way to go about it. Oh, sorry. There we go. So white jumped out. So this was the last white move. White is trying to attack black on the right side. And black is trying to split and attack white. So it's a very tactically sharp position here. A Salon is asking about d10. I wouldn't really advise attaching at d10. I don't think that's the best move. That would be this one. Jumping here would probably be okay. Looks like white's not going to be able to attack it very strongly. But the strongest local move would be to cover here, I think. And this is the move that I would like to choose. It all depends on how you read out the following fight. Because this is just kind of a hair's breadth away from being captured. It's a dangerous move. But if it works, it's the most effective. So white's also with this jump, white was making the fight bigger. For instance, I was showing, a moment ago, I was showing this move. This would be the simpler way to play. And black would still be able to live underneath. So it wouldn't be as if the black group is going to die. But this would close black in and connect the white stones. So that would be a relatively safe way for white to play. When white plays here, black does have the option of jumping out. So I would be thinking first of this move. And the question is, does white have any way to connect? So if white cannot connect and black can play like this, then at least the direction of play is working okay for black. But we have this black group on the right, which is not very strong. And black's connection towards the upper left corner, upper right corner is not so good either. So there's a lot of stones that could get cut off here. And of course, that group on the upper side is not 100% alive either. With all these weaknesses, black is actually trying to attack white and has some potential to attack white too. But in this case, white would probably play here and something like this. It looks like white should be able to make shape on the outside. So that's the idea with the marked white stone, is to move the fight to the center here and make it a larger scale fight, which maybe white has potential to attack black with. Okay. Okay, that's a good question. The Dawn Slayer. Would black's knight's move at c9 be standard? And I should start by saying that with this fight developing on the right, black's not going to be doing this yet. This would be another way for black to play. And then maybe something like this. And this would also be a way for black to escape. So if white answers on top, black could slide here. And it looks like this is going to be difficult for white to kill it. I'd say this is going to be difficult to kill. So yeah, playing the knight's move might work also. And it becomes a life and death problem. But for the time being, black would like to continue fighting strongly on the right side. So this would be just trying to play strongly with everything. The idea being something like this. Or black could start with adding a move to the upper side. For instance, something like this or something like this. Mm-hmm. There, Leo wants to cut the knight's move at m6. Well, once white gets out here, for instance, with something like this, that will be a real threat to be cutting at this point, at some point. So that is a real threat that white has there. But first, white has to get on the outside. Cutting there and being surrounded would be the bad idea. Rick Rubenstein asks, is black hoping to seal the bottom during this fight? And when the fight is really intense like this, you don't really... strange to say, but it doesn't really matter so much. These territories, the territory that black has, the potential territory that black has on the lower side, the potential territory that white has on the left side. These two areas actually are getting less important when compared to this fight that's happening in the upper right. As this fight heats up, it becomes relatively important when we compare to the potential territory on the lower side and the potential territory on the left. And it's not as if the players are going to ignore those two areas, but they become relatively less important, and the fight in the center of the board becomes more important. So winning the fight in the center will change what happens to those two areas. And so it's the areas themselves are secondary. So black is played from the left here, and the idea is to allow white to push out and to move out with that move. So if black is okay there, then this would be good. Basically, when you're trying to set up a splitting attack here, and black is trying to attack white on the upper side and those stones on the right there, when black is trying to set up that splitting attack, it tends to be more effective when you're splitting them just before they connect. So the white stones are close, but they're not allowed to connect. Then it is a more effective way of cutting them off. It's just it becomes a more strong and forceful attack when you do it that way. So that's what black is trying to do in this variation. The question is whether white can do something like this and capture the black stones. This looks actually a bit dangerous for white, just because there's moves like this that would be hitting a number of weak points in the white shape. So it doesn't look like it's going to work very well for white. Attaching underneath. And I think that the move that Rick Rubenstein is suggesting is probably this one. But black would get some mileage out of the double peep here, and then would back off in this direction. And it's going to be difficult for white to make two eyes in this variation, so it's not as if white can get two eyes out of it. In which case it would be bad, because white's having trouble getting out into the center now. Instead, I think the stronger way for white to play would be on this side. But this has to capture the two black stones in order to be any good. So, like I was showing before, it does look a bit difficult for white to capture those two stones. So how to play? Some mundane move like this might actually be the best idea. Or an attachment on the left. Aha. I was wondering what Elias No Go meant when he said, "Are you on the purple side?" Is that Twitch? I'm not on Twitch in this broadcast. I'm not set up to do that yet. It could be happening in the future. J2, okay, that's W Zhang. It is a move you see a lot, but let's put it on the board. This is the type of move you will play if you think you have room to make two eyes. So, for instance, if this were making two eyes, but I sort of doubt that it makes two eyes. So, for instance, even if black plays very simply like this is not going to be a living shape. Or actually, maybe even like this. Or otherwise, it might even be more strong for black to play this way, and then crawl, and then play here. So if white cannot make two eyes, then playing the attachment on the second line is not going to be a good move. And it will be better, it depends on that. So if white cannot make eyes underneath, then maybe white wants to play the forcing moves from towards the center, in which case white has more speed moving out. N5. Okay, that's HH asking N5 question mark. And yes, N5 is a move that white would like to work, but white's shape on the right there is a bit flaky. It's not a very good shape. So, provided if white could capture the two black stones, this would be okay. But I don't think white can capture those two black stones. So it looks like Ichiriki is taking his time again. I think really in these games, games used to take actually several days, and then even in the 20th century, players in the sponsor tournaments, they would be adjourned after at the end of the first day, and it would be a multiple day game. So the players had plenty of time. Nowadays, the players in this game are playing with just 1 hour on the clock, and after that, they have 1 minute per move. So time has become a very important asset that the players have to. I think the players have to manage it and keep enough time to be able to continue playing the game because professionals make mistakes. We're human, obviously. Crystal Harris, thank you. Thank you for the present. We make mistakes, and the most important mistakes are made towards the end of the game. So it's very important to be able to have some time when this crucial part of the game comes up, because the winning and losing moves are played later in the middle game, and sometimes towards the end game. And so I think it's a bad strategy to be using a lot of time early in the game. And I think the way that players like Shinjinso, who have researched the opening a lot, or it makes them capable of playing quickly in the opening, and it gives them an advantage because they can play with a reasonably good position and also a time advantage going into the middle game. And this is actually, it's much more important than many players seem to think it is. Sam A is asking, is that why Japanese players are not successful internationally? And I think that could be part of it, but it's really hard for me to understand sometimes because the Japanese players also, for quite a while, have been starting playing shorter time limits. So it shouldn't be that much of a problem for them. Oh wow, this is an interesting development. I didn't expect black to play that move. But black is threatening to connect up to the right side, so that playing at the O3. That's the Q8 point. Let's put it on the board. So if white plays something like this, I suppose black's gonna play here. That's gonna stop. That's gonna end the fight there. It'll be a peaceful conclusion. But as I was saying, I find it strange that the Japanese players still seem to tend to be using too much time in the early stages of the game. Okay, so now if white were to play on the right, I think the idea is that black would use this move to cut white off. And that stone, white's shape on the upper side is not so good. Even if white plays here, this is not going to look like a living shape. Elias no go, thank you. Thank you for the present. I'm not sure it's an accurate time, but the clock on Cyberoro has Ichiriki with 11 minutes and Shinjinso with 32 minutes and 54. So this, I think this only works as a kind of an estimate, and it might not be the actual time on their clocks, but it does give a general idea that Ichiriki seems to be about 20 minutes behind Shinjinso in time. Yes, yes, Same was very good at giving us an update the other time. So I think this is black's. This would be bad for white, even if black played something like this. So I think the other option for white would be to play something on the upper side. And now that it looks like white's actually going to get a territory there, this would be a case where now that attachment that we were talking about earlier could potentially work. This is a variation where that attachment, white would be building a living shape and the territory there, and the attachment would be working okay. Crystal Harris is asking, are there still tournaments where one game goes over and the last move is sealed until it resumes the next day? And there's 3 tournaments in Japan that do that, where they have 2-day title matches in which the title matches are best of 7 matches. So the player who wins 4 games first is going to win the title match. And these games are played with something like 8 or 9 hours time limit for each player. And so they adjourn in the evening of the first day. And because of AIs being stronger than humans, the players, all of their electronic devices are taken away from them as they go to the hotel that they play their games. Yes. Well, theoretically, Rick Rubenstein is saying that still there's a problem with the potential of AI study in between. And I think that's a real problem. But we're assuming that they're not going to do that. The major title league games, for a long time, several decades ago, they'd switched to playing it in one day. But they do have a long time limit, so they're much longer than the Nongshim Cup. Well, the Nongshim Cup it's only 1 hour each, so it's a very quick game. It's quicker than most of the elimination tournaments that I play in Japan. So white has cut black off there on the right. And we'll see if Shinjinso plays my move. So I was suggesting this move, which would cut white off there. Or otherwise black's going to continue, I think, on the upper side. Otherwise black could play something like this. In either case, white is going to have to move out after this. Maybe something like this. I don't know, maybe this way. Oh, black did play that move. The conversation here is continuing about the fact that players are giving up their electronic devices. Actually, when I play a game at the Japanese Go Association, a tournament game, as I enter the playing room, there is this rack of lockers where I can put my phone. I have to put my phone in there. And if I was caught carrying a phone or any kind of device that could connect up to the internet, if I was caught carrying something like that during the game, then there would be severe consequences. I think they have similar rules in Korea too. Um, Nyung Tong Ah is asking, doesn't Black have 2 week groups? And I did say yesterday that one should not have 2 week groups to begin with. And so this is tough for Black, but actually, um, I think Black is going, if you're ready to sacrifice a group, then it's okay to sacrifice it. So the fact that Black's group on the right is weak is okay because Black is prepared to sacrifice that group if Black can get the good position on the upper side. And it's interchangeable with the left side. The left side is also very important. There was a Japanese player here asking um, Ryonozuki. Ryonozuki is the Japanese word for a double peep. So that's what we call it in English. Yes, yes, that was a big. Miguel Molina is remembering the young professional Korean girl who was punished for cheating, and that was a big deal. I was sort of surprised she wasn't kicked out of the professional system, actually. So on the upper side, Black does have 2 ways to capture white stones. So there's this way of capturing some stones on the right to make a big corner territory. And let's see. If white were to play something like this, then black would capture these stones. So a bit more complicated if white chooses this move, in which case black cannot do that. So this would be a bit dangerous for black. But black would probably pull back. I think white's probably going to sacrifice those stones on the top, and black is probably going to sacrifice these stones on the right, in which case black would be able to move to the left side and start a new fight here. And while both sides have gained some territory in this trade, the fact that black has sort of reinforced the upper side is going to make it easier for black to fight on the left side of the board, just because that black group on the upper side is now strong. Okay, it looks like Ichiriki is already starting to run out of time. Solomon Choi, thank you very much. That was a big gift. Amazing. hmm So I'd say both sides are sacrificing 2 stones here. Tuan, thank you. New Tuan, thank you very much. I'll probably do better just saying Tuan. So I'll do that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. White does need one more move to finish capturing the left side. For instance, this would also be a big move that White would want to play somewhere on the left side here. But there's a lot of bad aji. I see more bad aji on the left side now. Sam is giving us a time update. And it pretty much agrees with what Cyberoro was saying. Black has 30 minutes 49 and White has 3 minutes. And it's White's turn. White's still thinking. The bad aji I was talking about is, for instance, this area. Black does have potential to connect up. For instance, if White plays here. This would just be a win for Black. Black would capture the 2 stones. And so White really needs, like for instance in this case, White would be able to capture the tail. But Black would be getting part of White's territory. So there is some potential there for Black to be reducing the White territory, even after White had played a stone. Okay, back to the game. So Black played here, and White connected, and Black connected to the corner, right? Yeah, that makes sense. That's a big move, actually. So now White has a choice. Oh, White played this way. White is continuing the local fight. In this case, I think Black will also continue it. So I'd say my first idea would be to play here. And my second idea would maybe be this one. I think this one looks better shape. Or Black could leave that stone. There are three potential directions of play, I'd say. So I'd start with the obvious move would be this one. Continuing the fight from the upper side. Moving from the right, let's see, where would Black play to move from the right? Something like this, maybe. Or maybe the peep. Moving from the right side would be another option. Or playing something on the left side of the board is also, it looks like a very big move to me. So there's a lot of ways that Black can do this. And the game is approaching the end. So we're getting closer to, as we get closer to the end game, moves that have to do with real territory are gradually going to become more and more important. So, for instance, erasing the left side or escaping on the right side do become relatively more important now. Bodo W is asking, do I prefer Black or White? I think I prefer Black. Black has a lot of options in this position. And Black's lower side is the territory that is hard to say how big it is, but it's going to be at least 20 points. means that black is much more than 40 points and probably close to 50 points already. And white doesn't really have that much in the ways of solid territory. Okay, so black is playing a very straightforward manner. And black is, when black plays this way, black is prepared to offer a sacrifice on the right side. So, for instance, if white plays this way, then black will be connecting up to the center and attacking white on the top. And this will naturally lead to black flowing inside the white territory. So this would work well for white. I mean, work well for black. Or if white plays something on the other side like this, locally black doesn't have a good move immediately, so black will probably play on this side and try to find a better way to slide into the right side or save those stones. So for instance, something like this, for instance. Or black could add a stone. Black could still sacrifice the right side and move. I really want to move to the left side at some point. It seems a very big move. The M7 cut. If white were, in the variation I was showing white play here, if white plays this way, black will probably play here in the Tari and then connect here. So white cannot capture that marked stone there, the stone with the triangle on it. And it means that one or the other of the white groups is going to be pushed around a little bit in this variation. So Ichiriki is at 1 minute per move. It's a worrying development. And if white pulls back, then black will probably pull back here. Actually, this would be a solid way to play. Dan Slayer is asking about white playing Tenuki in some cases. In this fight, it's both players have invested a lot of stones. For instance, so it's not very likely. So it probably was a joke, but for instance, this stone. Once white has played this stone, it becomes difficult for white to be playing away. So white did push through here, and so if black plays here, maybe white's going to fight strongly on this side too. In which case, black would be able to push through here. So, of course, the bad move for black this would make it easy for white, and white would just connect up on the outside. So I don't think this is going to be good for black. So that's why I'm suggesting black should play here. It's really hard for me to see any other move. This seems to be the natural move for black. I wonder who Yuta Yama is. How big is B17? B17. B17 is big, and it's going to be forcing when black plays it. Oh 09. Oh 09. The peep. The peep is. I would not expect the peep. This move. Interesting. And that would take me by surprise. I think it's natural at this point for black to play something towards the right side. So that's why I was suggesting this move. Somewhere in that direction. Exalted Toast is saying, what is Ichiriki's style as a player? I'd say Ichiriki is a very, he's done a lot of study with computer programs, obviously. He's a very aggressive player who actually has, I think has a lot of ability to calculate. So he's sort of typical of the younger players nowadays. Interesting question. What was Gosegan like as a teacher? That was Derek Neal. Gosegan was the old style. So like in his teaching style, in the past, there would be, in a study group, there would generally be a teaching player, a more experienced pro, who would have the experience to give positional judgment. And that was usually the biggest difference between a top player and the younger players who were going to the study group would be the difference in the ability to judge positions. The positional judgment is something that took decades for a professional player to perfect or to take to a certain level. And it was generally lacking in younger players. But of course, nowadays, we have the AIs to give the positional judgment, and it's actually very accurate. So, actually, there's a lot of study groups that do not have players like Gosegan, but he was basically giving a lecture, looking at our, he looked at our games, he reviewed games that we played, and he would tell us where we should have played. And it was sort of very instructive, but also it was just going one way, you might say. It wasn't a much of a conversation. Telegraph Go is asking, do I ever try to set traps specifically for opponents on low time? I think that sort of mixes in with the idea that how you play when you're behind. So if you're behind and playing a simple game and taking it to the end game would not be good enough, then naturally you will try something that's a bit maybe questionable, but more complicated for the opponent to handle. And so that would be a time where you could, where the fact that your opponent does not have time to think about it would be a factor that would go through my mind. Don Slayer is asking, yes, I will be making more videos about my games, so there will be opportunities for people to see them. So that was one of the questions. And he's asking, have I thought about bringing my opponents in on the video reviews? And that would, there would be a language problem if I'm doing them in English. Because most pros don't have that much English. So they might be, at least they would feel a bit embarrassed speaking English on video probably. Okay, Yuta Yama is saying, may I know what the admission requirement of Nihonkin Insei is? So Insei is the school where children study to become professional Go players. And basically you send in records of games that the child has played, recent games, and the Insei teachers. There's a number of, I think it's about 3 advanced professionals who will be tutoring the Insei. And so they will be looking at these game records and deciding if the child is, of course, age is a factor also. The child has to be young, and they will decide if it is okay for the child to become an Insei. Black is taking a long time. I think we might be having some trouble with the connection or something. Probably not my side. I see the chat. The chat seems to be moving in Cybero, but we might have some issues with the game moves. Yes, in fact, in the other server, I see that the moves are moving. Let's see if I can find. Maybe I can give you a variation. So I have another server on my phone here, my cell phone. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, that was my mistake. Okay, here's the game position that I was showing before, and I was in the review mode, so I wasn't seeing the moves. So black did play the Hane here, and white played here. Okay, so black played these forcing moves before cutting white off there. And so in this position, that white group on the upper side is not connected. So if white, let's just have black play a random move towards the lower side. If white connects here, then black can cut white off with this move. And that group on the upper side is in trouble. Otherwise, if white pushes through here, this is going to be a ko. But yeah, so this is going to be a ko, but obviously it's going to be more of a liability for white when that whole group it's getting bigger. So white cannot afford to lose this ko. White does have some local ko threats. So maybe white's going to win it, but black's going to be able to play 2 moves on the left side there. So that's the idea here. Oh, black played a very solid move here. So when black plays here, this is cooled down the lower side. So basically there's no big moves towards the lower side for a while. And black has more than 20 points there. So that's a relatively stable area now. And that it's not really that valuable for either side to be playing immediately. And maybe close to 15 points in the upper right corner. White connected, so black's going to push through there. And if black captures those white stones, that's going to be more than 30 points added to that upper right. So it's 45 points there, 65 points for black. White has about 25 points on the right side. And okay, so black's taking some time with this move. Oh, black turned to the left side. So that's interesting. So the move I had expected black to play, the M9 cut. Okay, that's a good question actually. But the move I was expecting black to play was this one. And the M9 cut is not a problem because black's just going to sacrifice those 3 black stones. And they're not very big. So that's not a problem. Like, black can just sacrifice it. And it's small. This would be relatively small, capturing the 3 stones. So what black would be more afraid of is white managing to do something here, for instance, with a cut here or something. It actually looks a bit too dangerous for white. I don't really see white surviving this. But this would be something that black would have to read out fairly carefully. And I assume he has. But black switched to the left side. This is also, even if we just look at it as territory, this is a huge move because it's putting a lot of pressure, taking away that potential white territory, and putting pressure on white on the left side there. It's a move that I sort of wanted to play for quite a while now. So in this case, we're not going to count the upper side, but I'm going to say that black has more than 10 points in the upper right corner, about 10 points on the upper side, and more than 20 points on the lower side. So that's more than 40 points, maybe about 45 points. Let's see, this territory white has on the right side is close to 25 points, so that's pretty big. And white has more than 10 points in the upper left corner. So the territory is not such a big difference, but it looks like white has some problems, like the left side is a bit thin, and that group on the upper side that white has just added a stone to, it's not connected up quite yet. So white has to resolve all of those problems. Maybe white's going to play that attachment and cut now. So this kind of thing, to test black's response before black gets time to play a move like 3 on the right. If white does this first, that will change how black has to answer. So he's trying to counterattack. Derek Neal was asking, can white just defend the left and let the group on the top die now that he captured 2 stones on the right? So just to go back a few moves, at this point, I think that was the plan that white had, maybe. Maybe white was going to... I don't really know exactly how white would continue here. Actually, white might continue with something like this. So I don't think white's going to give up that easily with those stones on the upper side. For instance, if this happened, it would be a very complicated position, which is a bit dangerous for black also, even locally. I think white was going to continue there. So I guess the answer is I don't think white's going to sacrifice the upper side in any case. So that could be why black switched to the left side. And now black has added a stone here. And with this, black is fairly well connected on the left, I guess, and is prepared to attack white on the left half of the board with the next moves. For instance, black could play something. Okay, so let's have white play, for instance, something. Oh, I was going to play that move. Okay, so locally, white might just answer it here. But for instance, black could play something like this on the left side, and that white group would have no base. So attacking this white group is something it's coming up. It's sort of pending to happen fairly soon. Thumper is asking white has L7. L7 is not such an effective move because black would, let's have black, for instance, play here. And black would answer on this side. And white needs one more move to connect up, so white would be able to capture the two stones. But if white doesn't do that, black would be able to cut white off with this move anyway. So I don't think that's how white would do it. So for instance, if white played this way, this would be more effective in that white is already connected up. So if black plays here, white can play away. And this time, this comes as an Atari. So white would be connected up already. So rather than L11, I think white wants to try to set it up so that white connects with tempo instead of being cut off. One reason this might be working for black is that black eventually will have this cut here also. And that's one of the virtues of black playing that move at M16, which strengthened these black stones. So black can cut here at some point, and that could be one of the moves that eventually black plays to get some more territory towards the lower side. Koast is going to bed, so good night. I realize it's going to be late for some of you people. Let's see if the servers... All right, I guess we're caught up. And Stephen, who is going back to the work. Okay. So let's see. Black, for the time being, black is still trying to attack, but switching to the left side is already an option. So playing something like this. I think if black does not play this move, then white will have room to make life. Tong is asking about the Shidogo teaching games. Teaching games differ a lot depending on the teaching pro. People are naturally competitive, and especially someone who's become a pro tends to be competitive. So even though it's a teaching game, it doesn't really mean that, well, in my case, it doesn't mean that I'm going to set up a win for black. So I am going to be playing competitively, but at the same time, I'll be trying to sort of ask questions to see what my opponent's style is, and to set up positions where the opponent has to make a mistake. I mean, has to make a choice about what to do about something. And if I can get some insight as to the weaknesses of my student, then it will help me give pointers as to how that player should proceed studying. Derek Newell. A leading question here, I think. If only there were some place we could all go to sign up and potentially get teaching games. And yes, that is my Patreon account. I have an account on Patreon where there is a level where you can join the $50 level where I do give teaching games. So thanks for mentioning that, Derek. And yes, I will welcome you to come to that, the Patreon account. And I play the teaching games on OGS at this time. That's my favorite. Oh, okay. Looks like maybe Shinjin-so heard me. So he played this move. Yeah, so this is basically, I was suggesting that. I happen to be right. It's the move that black was sort of aiming at up to this point. And black is attacking white on the left side of the board. It's going to gain territory. Black is probably going to get a base on the left side in the process. So there's a lot of purposes. It's a multi-purpose move. Uh-huh. Oh, interesting. Very quickly moving here. It looks almost... It could be the operator putting the stones in, but it looked like Shinjinso played that move almost instantly. So with this move, black is cut white off and is probably going to capture one of the two white stones. Thank you, wise man. Okay, so black has a lot of potential in the center of the board in this game. Black is cutting off that white stone on the fourth line. So for instance, in a variation like this, black would be building a territory from the left side, and white would be able to connect up here. But black would still be building a lot of territory towards the center of the board. So this looks like it's a good variation for black. Actually, white's connection might be on the second line, but it's still a bit thin there, I would say. And black is getting some territory while attacking here. So if white then protects the cut here, then black would switch back to this point. You can see black is getting territory in various places. It's starting to look good for black, I'd say. That's 25, 35, 45. White has close to 50 points. But black does also. And then if you add the left side, I think black has a winning margin there. Okay, we have some more moves. Okay, white pulled back here. The game is moving fairly quickly now. Looks like white is trying to set up an attack against the black group in the center of the board. White's move in the corner was a bit of a surprise. White didn't have a good local move. So for instance, if white had played something like this, then the game would have continued with white trying to settle these groups, this group on the left here. And I think in general, the game is going well for black, and black would just chase the various white groups and consolidate the various black territories. Black might start with this move. This is always a big move. White will answer it here. It looks good for black. So he's making a change of pace, I think, what white was doing with this move. White was making a change of pace and preparing to sacrifice on the left side with the hope to get something from a potential attack in the center of the board. White is looking at that group in the center. Black will probably be adding a stone somewhere. That exact point is really difficult to choose, but somewhere in the center would be a big move. So white is trying to take the initiative with this sequence here. Oh. Okay, so that's a big move. And white still has something less than 50 points. I'd say now white has more than 10 points in the lower left corner, more than 10 points in the upper left corner, and something like 25 points on the right side. So that's about 45 points. Black needs 50 to win, 50 to make it close, that is. And in the upper right and the upper side, black has more than 20 points. Black probably has more than 20 points on the lower side, and then the left side. So the territory is still fairly close, and everything depends on the fight that's going to happen here in the center of the board. And we can see white is trying to play aggressively here. White's corner is getting, if white is going to save those two cutting stones, the corner is getting a bit thin. So for instance, this kind of move would be troublesome for white in the corner. So this would be a bit of a headache. Oh, it is. So this is happening. But maybe white would not immediately save those two stones. And white is still threatening black in the center of the board. So that black group in the center of the board is looking a bit thin. Ah, black added a stone there. Yeah, I agree with HH that it's a pretty chaotic fight. Now I think white's going to try to accomplish something on the left side of the board. If white can be aggressive on the left side of the board, then this has been a success for white. So for instance, something like this. Cypher is asking who is left in the tournament. So there's one more Korean player. I think it's Park or Park. Park Jungwon, I believe. And I'm probably mispronouncing his name. And KJ. KJ is waiting for China. Yeah, Park. Yeah. So when this set of rounds started, it was two players for each of the three countries. So Japan had Iyama and Ichiriki, and Korea had Shin Jin-so and Park, and China had Yang Jinqing and KJ. Yes, it is a team tournament. So this is the 12th game, and if all the players end up playing, then it will go to 14 rounds because it's 5 players for each country. It depends on whether we can pull out the final Korean player because Shin Jin-soo is doing so well. HH is asking, did COVID impact how top players train? Um, I believe so. I think it impacted all of us. Um, Plus the fact that nowadays AIs are stronger than professionals. It's possible to get the necessary training just using a computer program to a certain degree. So a lot of players are studying just with computers, I think, because of the fact that um, people feel uncomfortable with going out. Oh, maybe I should get back to the game variation. Okay, so we have a few moves. White bumped against here. Black played here now. White played here. And so the idea with this is that if black plays here and here, white can cut and extend here. This looks like it's going to be working for white. It looks okay for white. So instead, black jumps out. And of course, black is looking at that connection underneath. White played here. And white is trying to stop black from doing that. So black will probably end up playing either the Hanetsugi or the Sagari. So that would be this move. And that looks like it's a potential seki in the corner. I doubt that this would be answered by this. Since black cannot make an eye, this is going to be a seki. Or if black plays here, I think white's going to be okay playing here. And that would be a living shape. So the corner's not dead. Otherwise, black could play here. And this would be a forcing sequence. Maybe something like this. So in the game, black just bumped against. Still leaving the potential, I guess. Let's see if white plays here. But if black does this and this is probably going to be a ko. So this could be exciting. It's really getting very difficult to say what's going to happen next. It's really a very chaotic fight that we're having here. Mira Williams is saying, how does playing online feel compared to over the board? It didn't bother me so much. Like even before COVID, there were a number of tournaments in which I participated online, and I did some. Well, a lot of younger players are doing it too, of course. A lot of informal playing online, and I didn't really have much. Actually, when you're sitting in front of a computer, there's less to distract you. Than if you're in a room filled with people, or at least I felt that way, and I felt that I could focus fairly well. Whereas some people were saying that it was not natural. But I didn't have that issue. HH is asking how likely would it be for the top left white stones to be dead? And that could happen. So just to go through that once more, black is still playing towards the center of the board, but let's just have white play a move here. In this case, if white plays here, this is going to be a ko like this, and white has to play the Atari. Without the Atari, this is locally, it's just a dead shape, so white has to play the ko on the side. Now if white cuts here, now black cannot make two eyes. So if black plays here, white will jump. This looks good for white. All right, it's going to be another ko-like shape. This could, or black could jump. This is going to be a ko at least. And if white bumps against it now, this is alive. So white has to play this Atari. And black would play here. And it would be a ko also. So there's a ko pending in the corner. As soon as black's stones on the outside become strong. So that explains why white has just played the hane here. To capture black's stone in the corner. So white will finish that off, and then we'll have to move back to the left side, which is weakened by this exchange. It's interesting, there's so many people who've not played on a real board. It's more common now that it's so convenient to be playing Go on a Go server on the internet, that there are a number of people who have learned Go remotely and then have played on the internet. It's just that in Asia, there's a lot of Go clubs, so people play in a Go club. But in the West, it's often easier to play on the internet. So here black is staging a little attack on white in the center of the board. The natural move for black to continue with next is if white connects there, the natural move would be to take the key point here, after which white really needs to connect up in the, well, white would maybe do it by taking the two stones like this. And eventually, let's see, how does black continue? Eventually, black is probably thinking of going after these two white stones. In this fight, white has managed to make a living shape, or what is going to become a living shape on the left side. Okay, so white connected, and black played the stronger move, cutting through here. So this is going to get even more exciting. Let's see. White, I think white can make an eye on the upper side. So for instance, if just to look at the shape of white's eyes, if white plays here and here, and like this, eventually it's going to be just so dangerous for black on the upper side there. It's going to be a ko at least. This would lead to a ko, or even white could connect here, and I would be worried about that black group on the left there. It's not alive. So it's going to be difficult for black to take away white's eyes. I would say that we could look at it as something like this. So white has a potential eye there at M4. Obviously, white's not going to do that yet. White has to find a good move towards the center of the board. So if white has a potential eye there on the upper side, white needs to get an eye with sente, an eye with a tempo towards the center. So for instance, something like this would be springing to mind, I think. This would be my first idea. Or here. It's just so painful. It's so painful if black gets this key point. Oh, white peeped here. Okay, that's the key point. White's going to have to bump against that. And now white doesn't have any eyes. Yes. Bodo W is remarking how amazing how flexible the game is with areas changing ownership so often. And that's what we're seeing happening on the left side of the board here. But the top players, most pros actually, but to a greater degree, top players will not be thinking in terms of territory so much as the flow of play. So it's really the relative strength of the various groups on the board and how they're flowing around the board is what's important. And so in this case, it's that black group in the center of the board where white has just played a peeping move, and the white group on the upper side and in the center, which looks like it's about to die. But it's these two weak groups that are fighting against each other. And then there's that weak white group on the left, which is probably going to be okay, but maybe it doesn't even matter so much anymore. Okay, so white had to connect there. White just doesn't have any eyes. Um, Sometimes strong players can handle that, but it does look very dangerous for white. People are remarking about the way that in Asia there's two top Korean players called Shin Jin-so and Shin Min-jun. I don't really know myself. I was thinking that it was their size because um, I think it's Shin Min-jun is. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, this is the natural shape for white to move out in the center. No eyes. No eyes is bad usually. It's a bad idea. I don't advise people to play with groups with no eyes. This black group on the left is actually fairly strong with the potential to push through at C12 on this go board. It's marked at C12. In the recent games of Shinjin, so I often see him. He seems to be playing very solidly and safely, and he turns that into an attack later in the game. So his thickness is he uses it eventually for an attack instead of just going for the territory. It's interesting to see how he plays. He uses it to attack later, which is the way you're supposed to use your thickness. So this is threatening black on the upper side, so black's going to have to answer that. And the black group is alive. If black adds a stone to it, it's alive, and white will have a potential either on the upper side. So it costs white a tempo to get that one eye. It will not come in sente. Hmm. C12. Oh. I'm not sure if Shinjinso is in view. I mean, that was Exalted Toast. The clock on Cyberoro gives him a few minutes of time left, actually. Hmm. Yeah, I think White was behind for most of the middle game here. Um, so yes, F10. That's Thumper asking was F10 an act of desperation? I think White had the idea that White had to play very actively here, even though White is locally in trouble. I think it was a valid choice that White did not have the leisure to play safely. Okay, this is going to be a forcing move against the black group, but it could potentially lose eye space for the white group. This was actually Sente for both sides, so it would usually have been Sente for black too. But it's a annoying move because it's an area that could have been Sente for black, and when white does that, you can see black is sort of reacting here. When white does that, black has the idea that he wants to do something like this to take away white's eye space before living on the side. So playing an exchange like this before living, and it looks like black can get away with it. And I would be thinking about this. I think it's giving black trying to give black an opportunity to complicate the game, which is what white wants. So not necessarily objectively a good move, but it's a kind of an annoying move, which is trying to get some kind of a reaction from black. Oh, and black did that. Okay, so looks like black is going to take away white's eye space. Jamal Taref, good morning. If you're saying good morning, you're in Europe. Or maybe that somewhere along that line. This is yeah, it's white's in trouble. If I were playing with white, I would be able to make one eye. One eye is not good enough. Mira Williams is asking, is there any hope for the white group now? I would say anything can happen, especially on a game played on a Go server on the internet. Um, but it's sort of in that at that stage where you have to sort of wait, hoping for kind of a miracle here. So on the upper side, black has the potential connection on the first line. Decidro Fob. Thank you very much. Yes, misclick would do it. Decidro Fob, maybe a Japanese player. Nihonjin desu ka? Asking which language do I feel more comfortable, English or Japanese? I feel fairly comfortable in both languages, but I get tongue twisted when I try speaking both at the same time, actually. It's a bad idea. So white is hoping to put pressure on black on the left and the right at the same time. And the reason it's not quite working is because black's group in the center of the board will be able to make two eyes if it gets cut off. Yes, I believe there was a game where Shinjin So played a move on the first line. By mistake, of course. And that was early in the game. I think we're coming to a climax here. Can black win if white miraculously lives? I don't think so. I think at this point black has to kill the white group. White has 50, 55 points. White has a lot of territory. So if white survives, then white would win. But black is pretty close to finishing off the white group at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if the game is going to end fairly soon, actually. Okay, I'll do the variation for F13. That's Exalted Toast asking about F13. If white plays at F13, black pushes through here and pushes through here, and white cannot cut. So it's connected up in the center. Oh yes, the game is finished. So white resigned at this point. Because if white plays, so just to give that variation again, if white curls around here, black connects up like this. And if white connects in the center, then black pushes here, and there's no way for black to cut those black stones, for white to cut those black stones off, just because this cut is forcing. So they're completely connected, and no escape in the center. So white had no choice. It was about time to resign. So that's it for Japan. There's just 3 players left in the tournament. There's Shin Jin-so and Park Jung-wang for Korea, and there's KJ for China. So KJ is the last hope to take it to the 14th round. Otherwise, there is one more game tomorrow, and I'll be doing it again. So tomorrow afternoon in Japan, tomorrow afternoon the same time. So come back to see the next game in this series. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the Japanese watching too. Arigatou gozaimashita. And I'll be back tomorrow. And KJ has to beat both of them. Yes. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.